Welcome to the American Institute of Stress's official podcast, Finding Contentment. The goal of this podcast is to highlight new information about stress and stress management techniques. While we understand that stress is a very personalized issue and different for everyone, we hope to help you find your own way to contentment.
Hey, greetings, everyone. Welcome back. This is your host, Will Heckman. I'm also the executive director for the American Institute of Stress. I want to thank you all for joining us again today. If this is your first time, these podcasts deal with stress and stress-related issues. And now many of you who are listening are experiencing so much negative stress that you really don't know what to do. And I understand that. Well, the first thing you need to do is evaluate your stress. And the American Institute of Stress has just released a new way to do that. It's called the Roche Stress Profiler. It just takes 15 minutes, and the RSP will show you how well you're coping in 10 key areas in your life, including anger and worry and fear, financial stress, and also time pressure. You know, in addition, the RSP will also show you how well you are doing with stress symptoms, stress outlets, social support, and overall resilience. And once you're armed with a better understanding of your stress strength and your weaknesses, you can begin to take immediate changes in your weak areas. And while you're relying on your strengths to start a healthier, happier lifestyle. So just go to stress.org to find it. It's there. We even have a little video. And while you're there, remember to visit our magazine section. You can subscribe to both our magazines, Combat Stress and Contentment. It's absolutely free. So why don't you do that? And speaking of subscribing, I'm going to do what every YouTuber does. Hey, why don't you hit the like button or the subscribe button in the corner? Come on, it takes a second. I feel ambitious. Hit a button, makes me feel better. Make my day. All right. So, as I said before, we talk about stress all the time on this show and also, of course, at the American Institute of Stress. But what do we really mean? A stressor is basically a situation that causes physical or mental change or is a challenge. And people tend to respond to stresses by obsessing about the situation. I'm guilty of that myself. You can even talk about the situation with others. And it's not uncommon for a person experiencing stresses to have a physical symptom. The physical impact of stress could include, and it's not limited to, having headaches, chest pains, your pulse gets rapid, stomach aches, God knows that's pretty common, jaw clenching and pain in your teeth grinding have become so common that almost every dentist is addressing that now. They're recommending mouth guards when you sleep. It's just become way too common. Might not even know you're doing it. Feeling lightheaded and dizzy or faint is also a problem when you're under a lot of stress. Panic attacks can be caused by stress, and they become so serious you think you're having a heart attack and you end up in the hospital. That's a stress symptom, a physical manifestation of a stressor. Irritability, you feel frustrated. Some people even told me they frequently feel like crying. That's how bad their stress is. But one of the most common thing is difficult making decisions, concentrating, or for forgetfulness. You get something like a brain fog because your stress is so bad. I know somebody who just went through that. And of course, there's diagnosable problems like depression, anxiety, and others. And stresses can be internal or external. Your fear or beliefs are examples of something that's internal, a stressor that's internal. While an external stressor can have environmental factors or involve other people, like work and your boss. Not my boss. My boss is great. Just saying. Dr. Kirsch, if you're listening, it's not you. Part of our stress management is changing, or just as our guest today has said, tweaking our lifestyle. And speaking of our guest, joining us today is Jessica Harrington. Jessica received her master's in public health at West Chapel University, and she's the owner of Journey to Yourself, and she's also a speaker and a stress management coach. And through her career in education, she's realized that we all have common issues. Everyone. at some point or another struggles with handling stress. And through her own life journey, Jessica has created Journey to Yourself. And you can find out more about Jessica and the Journey to Yourself by going to her website, which is called journeytoyourself.net. Don't forget it's .net, because we also used to putting in .com that we do it automatically. So it's journeytoyourself.net. It's great stuff. I was looking all over it. It's just got a lot of great information, and you're going to want to take a look at that. So please join me in welcoming our guest, Jessica Harrington. Hi, Jess. How you doing?
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm glad you're excited. We're so excited to having you. I've read a lot of stuff that you talk about on your site, and it was really fascinating. It was very compelling, some of it. And on your website, you also speak about and write about your journey to yourself, which I thought was it was very interesting. And so I was going to ask you if you could share a bit about that journey and how you got to doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, it's called Journey to Yourself because I feel like a lot of us have to come back to ourselves, right? We go through a lot of these life events. And so that's kind of where a lot of this came from, was my own personal life events. I grew up in an addiction household. And so I tell a lot of people that no one really knew what was going on, because I was always the happy kid. I was always the one that was laughing and smiling and, doing everything. So no one really knew that I was sad, or I was, stressed out, or I was depressed, right? Because I was also young. And so nobody really knew, because no one really goes to the happy kid going, hey, why are you so happy? That's just weird, right? But if they saw me sad or crying, then they would ask what's wrong, right? So it was kind of my way of controlling my life. And we all find ways to control our life. But the thing was, I kind of took this mindset with me throughout my life of being the happy kid, finding ways to control things so nobody could hurt me. Or if I did this one action, then this will be the outcome, right? But eventually you go to burnout, and eventually you break down. And eventually, you kind of said one of the symptoms, you cannot stop crying. And eventually you go through these stomach pains and losing weight, and you go through all of these changes. And then you go, well, why? So when I went through my why, and went through my stepping back and realizing what I have created in my life, I was like, I realized how much I was doing for other people. I wanted people to perceive me the happy kid. I wanted to be the one that, if work needed somebody to come in for the 3rd day, 8th day in a row, I was going to be the person, right? So I was doing a lot for other people, and I really lost sight in myself. And so finding my way back to myself was something really important. But as I did that, I realized that a lot of us have found this in some way in our life, right? We've all gone through some kind of pain that had to go, okay, I need to come back to me.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. And you're a young person, and a lot of times people don't realize that that our young adults are going through a lot of things, and they don't always show it. They have no idea how to show it. They're young, they're inexperienced. They really don't know how to reach out for help. The stress that they're going through is they tend to internalize it, because you don't have the words to really express it. It's great that you were able to do that. And how old were you when you were going through all this?
I would say probably like 25, 26, around that area. Yeah,
that's really young. And I've seen, it's stressful enough being 25. It just is.
I think you said a lot too. Like, I don't think it's always about the age. It's about what's going through in your life and how you're expressing it, right? So I think a lot of it is the communication piece. But for me, what I think is important is the first awareness. I didn't realize what I was putting myself through. I didn't realize my avoidance. And so it wasn't until I had my breakdown and I was like, oh, wait a minute, And so, yeah, it wasn't until then, because working more than one job, doing part-time job, going to school full-time, having a full-time relationship, then friendships and family, that's normal. That's what you're supposed to do, quote unquote, so, but it takes a toll.
It's funny. I just had this conversation with my daughter, who's 23, and just got a promotion and is working, and has worked her, like, what'd she tell me? She worked 42 hours in 3 days. I said, really? That's might be a bit much. You're going to get like really burned out. But she understands, and she's bright. And a lot of young people are understand it and bright, but they don't really know what to do about it. That's why people like you will come along and have coaching sessions and are able to talk to people are such a value to people who are going through really bad, stressful situations. I wanted to ask you, everyone, we talked about stress obviously all the time because it is our business. We've been around the longest of any stress organization.
Wow.
And the father of, we like to say the father of stress, but he's really not. But the father of the concept of stress, as we understand it, Dr. Hans Selye, who is a professor, was the American Institute of Stress was created at his behest by Dr. Paul Roche. So we go back a long way, and we talk about stress all the time, but everyone defines stress in different ways. If you ask two people, you're going to get three opinions. So I want to ask you, give us your best definition. Since you talk to people about stress all the time, give us your best definition of what you think stress is. And I now realize it's not the same for everyone, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, of course. So when I do my workshops or I work with my coaching program, I do define it as a reaction to change. And I say it that way, like you said, we're doing all your research, you kind of like put things together. But I also, when I worked in the drug and alcohol fields where I started my career, that's kind of how we define it to our patients. And I really took it with me because in my mindset, stress is every day, changes every day. And so they kind of really go together. And so you're always going to have a reaction to something that happens to you, right? So for me, it's, whether it's good or bad stress, but you're always going to have a reaction. And like we were talking about earlier, it first starts with the awareness of everything, right? So when I react this way, then, I learn my different reactions to changes that are happening to my life. And I think for me, the way I really explain it is I try to do the like small, like cute stressors, right? So I always do the story of you wake up in the morning, there's no, you're going to make your coffee. I'm so sorry. You're going to make your coffee in the morning. You go get ready and you start to smell the coffee's brewing. So you go to the kitchen and you're like, oh, great. Coffee's ready. You open the fridge and there's no creamer, right? So simple thing, nothing big deal, but you're going to have a reaction to it because every other day this week, there's been creamer in there. Right. So then you're going to have, like you mentioned in the beginning, you're going to have those three reactions. I say three. So I say physical, which again, it's just creamer. So maybe it is just like the in the stomach, but then it's that emotional you talked about earlier too, with it's, well, if I wasn't so dumb and didn't forget to bring the creamer home last night, right? Then I would have had creamer this morning. Or it's the blame. Well, he never thinks of me. It's, he's always being selfish. He's too busy for me. He should have just brought the creamer home. And then it's the behavior. So am I slamming the fridge shut? Am I texting him saying, you never think of me? So it's, for me, I say it's a reaction to change because change is every single day.
You're right. It is and multiple times a day. And it's how we're reacting to it that's why we really need to, that's one of the reasons we came out with the RSP is because people sometimes don't realize what their stressors are.
Yeah.
You think it's something. I was talking to on this podcast the other day with somebody, and he told me he kept a stress journal, which I think is a great idea, or just a journal in general. But he also put down when he was feeling stressed, and he was talking about. I was looking at that journal and looking at when I was feeling stressed. And he said he was at the DMV, and then he was at this grocery store, and then he was at, I forgot one other place. And I said, oh, were you spending money? Right? He goes, no. I was waiting online, and I found that commonality, and then he realized what his stressors were, and he changed his lifestyle a little bit. And it's such a great idea for and people like you who are coaches who can direct people and show people and maybe make people come to a realization of what it really is. Not the creamer. It's Dunkin' Donuts down the block. Let's just go, right?
Yeah, I love that idea. Not creamer. I love the idea of the journal. I always recommend, journaling. And I think it gets such a bad rep. I think a lot of us people could think, oh, it's your diary. This happened today, and it's just like, no, so I've changed this to call it a brain dump. Just get it from here to on the piece of paper,
Right.
And like you said, either it creates that awareness, but you kind of mentioned it too. You kind of, hype on like that thought all day long. So if I get it out of the head and I put it on the piece of paper, might not be on there as long, or I can maybe start the process of processing what is happening, right?
Yeah, and not only that, but I've talked to people about this before. It doesn't matter what you're writing. It really doesn't. You just, like you said, doing a brain dump, which I think is a great way to put it. But the connection of doing something physical, the physicality of writing something or typing it, it's fine. It's cathartic. It lets you have a release of some of that stress.
Yeah.
Just your connection with that, doing something physical. You're doing something. The one thing, and if you listen to the show, you've heard me say before, the one thing you should never do is nothing, because nothing will change. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, I know you talk to people all the times. What right now, because we're coming out of a quote unquote a pandemic and a lockdown, and which created all kinds of other problems.
For sure.
And besides that problem, what are people talking about right now that's causing them stress? When they come to you in your programs, what is it that they're talking about? Is it the regular, normal things that we've always heard? At AIS, we just updated all the statistics on our site. We do that every so often because we want to stay current. And the APA just does their survey, and we use their statistics. They're very good. And stress is on the rise. I tell people there's a global stress pandemic right now. So what are they talking to you about?
So speaking of the pandemic, I think like you were saying, stress has been around. This is not a new thing, right? But I think with the pandemic, we had to kind of face and become aware of what our stressors are, or maybe who in our life is causing us stress, or maybe that person I haven't had that real conversation with that I should have had that conversation with. So I will say for me, a lot of my clients do come to me about communication. How do I say this? Or when they say this makes me feel this way, right? So a lot of it, I will say, it's communication with like their significant others or their children. So I would say a lot of that is the communication piece. But it's a lot about being there for their family. And so for me, what I really focus on is that kind of like that inner dialogue, right? So how am I talking to myself? Because for me to have that communication with you, I need to know what I need and want, right? Or how that makes me feel. So it's what am I saying to myself, and how am I communicating that to others, right? So I think it is a lot about you, but also in the family piece, a lot of them want to be like, oh, I want to be the best mom. I want to be the best dad. I have to work these hours so I can get them that, that brand new bike, which is great. And it's true to a certain extent, right? So you were setting that example of, how to take care of yourself, right? We show them how to brush our teeth. We show them that we shower. We show them to eat healthy, but also showing them how to mentally be there for you. And that's going back to that self-love again.
Well, I think you hit the nail right on the head when you talked about the inner dialogue.
Yeah.
It's my arch enemy.
It is. The things that, and I always say this too, the things that you say to yourself, you would never say to your sister. You would never call your mom up, be like, you're so stupid for forgetting that creamer. Like, there's no way. You would never. You didn't charge your phone last night? What an idiot. There's no way. Oh, you don't deserve to be loved. There is no way you would write a letter to someone saying that.
Neuroscientists tell us that we have between 70 and 80,000 thoughts a day, and that 75 to 80% of them are negative. And I tell people all the time, I said, okay, if nothing else, if you could get that number down to say 50-50, how much better would your life be? Yeah. I've said this to people multiple times this week. Give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Somebody would come to me and say, this is going on, it's really bad, I'm really feeling bad. I said, well, if I came to you and said that, what would you tell me?
Yeah.
Well, you would be a good friend, but you're not a good friend to yourself. So I think you hit the nail right on the head. That inner dialogue we have.
Yeah. And it can be overwhelming. Like, again, going back to one of the symptoms you said in the beginning, it just keeps circling. I call it the hamster wheel. Like, it just keeps circling and circling and circling. And it's just, sometimes stories get added to it. Right. So how are you talking to that inner dialogue? Because like you said, we all have it. We do this for a living. We still have it. It's never not going to be there, but it's how are we quieting that noise. Right. And so, that's one of the things, going back to the coaching is definitely one of the things I work with and, talked about, for example, I had a client, reach out to me this morning, and she's pregnant, and she was talking about, she's getting nervous, the anxiety of having her first baby, and she goes, this baby is going to be with me forever. This little kid's going to be with me part of my life. I'm going, that little kid gets to be part of your life forever. Right. Or she kept using the word, my life is changing and changing. Granted, she's happy. I'm not, obviously she's so happy, but it's scary. And so she's like, change is scary and change is scary. And I say, well, it's growth. Edit the sentence, use growth. My life is growing. I'm becoming a bigger family. It's becoming more love, right? So it's finding different ways to kind of use those sentences and kind of edit those sentences, I think is also really important.
No, that's great. I would say to her, if somebody came to you and said they're pregnant, what would be the first thing you would say? Congratulations. So if it's a positive thing, instead of say, I'm really scared, say, change that word to excited and see, your body reacts the same to it.
And that's where it gets that awareness, that confusion comes in, right? Anxiety, the nervousness and excitement, they're the same symptoms, and it's so confusing, So even coming on here, I was so excited. Remember, I told you I've reached out to you. I was so excited, but it's the same like butterfly feelings of like, okay, just, talk slow, Jess. Don't throw too much excitement, it's that still inner dialogue, but it's the same simple symptoms of if I was nervous.
Well, we were just as excited to have you come on. So it's fine. Don't worry. It's just a comment. It's just me. No one's listening. No one's listening. Don't worry. So, I read one of your articles recently where you spoke about 5 lifestyle tweaks, which I thought was a really good way to put it. And that helps people to support their journey towards a better well-being. We're all looking to do that. You just want a better feeling of well-being. And that's where those negative thoughts come in, and that inner dialogue that seems to happen just right before you fall asleep. Oh, I'm sorry, that's just me. It happens to all of you. I know if you're watching and you're listening, I know. It's okay. It's perfectly normal. But we need to do something about it. Like Jess said, if you get on that hamster wheel and you never get off and you don't do anything to get off, you get stuck there. So what are some of those tweaks that you talked about? We need things to do. We have to do something.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing I always say, so I'm really big on the bite-sized pieces, right? Because again, like how I define stress, it's a reaction to change, right? So if I'm saying like, use this big habit and, then you change your whole life, it's gonna be great. That's a lot. That's scary. So just bite-sized pieces. So I always start saying with the 1 to 5 minutes, just yourself a day. 1 to 5 minutes. You can find 1 to 5 minutes of just yourself, right? So scheduling out through the day, maybe it's before I sign on, right? So maybe I have to be on the computer by 8 o'clock. So from 7:55 to 8 o'clock, it is just me, right? So that could be journaling. That could be breathing. That could be reading. Maybe you have that book that's been sitting on your nightstand, right? I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it. And then you get to bed, you're like, well, I'll just search social media, or I'll, flip through the channels. Just read 1 page, right? Read 2 paragraphs. So just starting with the small piece, I will say that's the biggest thing for sure. So just getting yourself on your schedule, on your own timeline, I think is really, really big for sure.
I think that's a great idea, and doing that every day. Don't wait till you're inspired or motivated to do it. Do it like you brush your teeth. Do it every day.
Every day.
Take out the motivational, need for it. Just do it. That's a good tweak. And you also talked about that people get into habits. and they need to either decrease or these certain habits to help manage their stress. What are some of those habits that people are in?
Yeah, of course. So some of the habits that I talk about for sure. So, I feel like, first of all, mindfulness is a huge word, right? So that's a huge buzzword. So what is it? So I always say for habits wise, try something new. Try something new is really big. And it can, again, going back to bite-sized pieces, it could be a new recipe. It could be not using the microwave tonight and we're going to use the oven, right? So just trying to find something new to do, I think is really big. And, and see if you like it or don't like it. Like I talk a lot about 5 years ago or so, you would never have caught me in the kitchen. It was a bowl of cereal, a bowl of ice cream. That was the only reason I was going into that kitchen. But, now I started teaching myself how to cook and it's my favorite place. As soon as I sign off at 5 o'clock or whatever time my last meeting is, go right into the kitchen. I put a podcast on and it's just zone, right? It is all about me. It's my place, but now it's my comfort zone. It's my happy place. But then I tried something new last year. I tried snowboarding. I hate the cold, but I was like, you know what? Let's just try it, right? What do I got to lose? Well, I found out that I'm far from coordinated and I should probably not be snowboarding. Found out that I bruise real easily. No, yeah. I knew that. But I also gained the confidence of trying something new. I also had a lot of fun that day. I also have a story that I talk about. I also have a memory, right? So trying that something new, and maybe it's not every day, but it's something to look for. I think is super huge to do as well. In the sense of, again, going back to journaling, that's one of my hugest things. I say start small. Again, starting small. I have sticky notes. I don't know if everyone still has sticky notes, but I do.
They're around here somewhere. I have them.
They're somewhere, right? They have a memory. Even if it's just a sticky note, and like you were talking about your friend or the person you interviewed the other day, you get that email, Joe emails you and you feel that overwhelming. Remember, you feel it in your chest, you feel it in your face, the redness. That's where I first feel it. And I'm just writing it down. Joe emailed me. I already talked to him about this. He didn't listen. Right. Whatever the case may be. But now I could just throw that away. Right. Mm-hmm. So it could just be something like you were talking about, just the interaction of the brain, the hand, writing it all out and getting it out of your brain, I think is super important. But again, it's that habit. If I do this every day, like your friend did, he created that awareness around himself. He learned what he needed to do to kind of create new habits in his life. And that's really what, like, for me, like, that's the biggest part is going back to the first thing I said is find that 1 to 5 minutes of just you and seeing where that takes you, because that's the biggest thing is that we don't make that time for ourselves. And then again, going back to how you talk to yourself. What are you doing, right? How are you talking to yourself when you get up in the morning and you put on that new outfit, or you're going to go for this interview, how are you talking to yourself? Having that self-check-in is super important. Another habit I'm really big on is your environment. Right now I have a lot of notebooks out right now, but they're all labeled, they're all for something. But, when I get done tonight, and I shut the laptop off, I'm putting everything back to where it needs to be. Right. I have a spot on my couch. Like, it's just my spot. It has my book. It has my night lamp. It has, so where's your spot? What are you doing for your spot? Right. So whether it's keeping it clean or organized, it's one of those, but also what's in there that makes you happy. A lot of us have these pictures. So I'll show you, but like my grandma, she's always right here. Right. So it's a younger picture of both of us, but it's, that's something that's happy. Right. I have a stuffed animal in here. I have, just those random things throughout the day that kind of keeps me going. Right. Because, soulpreneur or not, days are hard. Why am I doing this? That lead never went through. I have the meeting canceled. What have you canceled today? Right. What are the things that are around me that are creating that happiness for me? And that kind of goes in hand with the people around you too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Boy, you ended on a favorite subject of mine. It's keeping positive people around yourself. Somebody did a demonstration once for me, and it really hit home just on that. And they had somebody stand on a chair, and it was a small person, and then it had a big guy stand next to them. and they held hands and they said, both pull. And which is easier, to pull someone down or pull somebody up? And man, that made a real, I said, oh my God, that's true. And it was just, obviously it was a gimmick, but you really, some of the times those illustrations are really humorous. So that's really truly the people you keep around yourself. You want them to be positive. No one's positive all the time. And if they're good enough friends, after you explain that they need to be better friends to themselves, and everybody reacts differently to how you talk to them. So you get a good feel, but keeping a positive environment around you is really. What about hobbies? What do you think about hobbies? Is that a good stress reliever?
I think so. I always encourage hobbies. And this is the thing, I think hobbies get a mixed rep because, some people want something that's just for them, but it doesn't have to be, right? You mentioned earlier about your bike club, right? So
motorcycle.
A motorcycle. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
So you're definitely different. We have a shovel head here. So I'm yeah.
Oh my God. It's a whole nother podcast. We're now going to talk about motorcycles because we could do that for hours. I promise.
Hours.
But if you really want to see about my motorcycle club, Recombat Stress Magazine, I just wrote an article in it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's
hobbies.
Good.
We're talking about hobbies.
Yeah, it's hobbies. But it's true though, right? So hobbies. So, okay, we can even bring the motorcycle up, right? I don't know much about it. I know how to be a really good passenger on the motorcycle, but for him, going out into the garage when it's been a long week and just half an hour sometimes turns into longer of just fixing the motorcycle, working on the motorcycle. It was his dad. So he gets to call his dad. He has that relationship, right? So how these things can kind of untwine, into something bigger where someone might just look at it going, oh, we just ride your motorcycle around. Well, no, I get to go out with me and we get to go out on nice dates and something different to do and just experience the air. How do we want to go outside, or having that relationship with his dad? Like, again, it was his dad's and now they get to bond over something. Right. So hobbies are so important. They could just be something that's singular where it's just something that's you, or it can be something that you do in a group. Right. But hobbies are so important. It's something to look forward to. It's something to kind of experience, right? And kind of going back to that mindfulness, that's kind of where that is. It's doing something else. It's being that awareness of what makes you happy. And it's also kind of like we were talking about with learning something new. It's that confidence. I get to learn something. I get to do something different. I get to this move, by the way, I learned disc golfing. I don't know if you ever heard of disc golfing, but it's one of my, it's one of my new ones that I'm learning. So, it's definitely something new, and the people that you meet, talking about positive people again, there's that support again, right? So there's definitely something great about having hobbies, and for different seasons and different things that you like to do. There is literally a hobby for everything. Just Google it. There's a hobby for everything.
I agree. I'm a hobbyist myself, so I do wood turning and leather work, but besides the motorcycle things. By the way, congratulations on being a good passenger. They're hard to find. All the bikers out there understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
But one of the things you do is you hold workshops. Yes. And as I was reading over your website, I saw some of the workshops you do. What are some of the kinds of things you do in your workshops?
Yes, of course. So we mentioned I do the one-on-one coaching for sure, but I really feel a lot of us are experiencing work stress, right? So how are you getting support at work? And that's really where I want to bring a lot of my workshops to. So going into businesses, going into corporate offices, blue collar businesses are actually really popular with me. I'm in a lot of manufacturer companies, HVAC companies. So they're up for it. But yeah, so for me, I go in there. So I have a 6-month plan. So this first workshop, I focus on your mission statement. You talked about that team building people up, right? So first one, why are we all here? How are we supporting each other, working together? We really break down what stress is. And then the rest 5 workshops I follow up with communication. How are we communicating at work, right? So breaking that down, going back to that bite-sized piece that I was kind of talking about. We talk about burnout, we talk about teamwork, mindfulness habits. Again, like what are they? What are we doing? How do we do it? And it's a 6-month program. Come into your office once a month. max 45 minutes. I understand that everybody still needs to eat lunch. So I don't want to take up everyone's too much time. So I get right to the point. But again, just those bite-sized pieces that you can do literally today that can kind of start to create, we talked about those habits. So that's basically my goal, giving you one step, create a habit. And my goal is to help build on that to grow a bigger habit.
There's a lot of EAPs, which employee assistance programs now, who want to have a stress reduction or stress management component to it.
Yeah.
And I remember as an educator, one of my jobs over the many years that I did it was the professional development coordinator for the school, and looking for things that would either help reduce stress or or help manage it. And there weren't really none. There was none. So I think it's a great idea, especially, people don't imagine a blue collar worker being under a lot of stress. Let me tell you something. Not only are they under a lot of stress, but when they are a lot of stress and they make mistakes, they can be downright dangerous. And so I think it's great that you do that. Finally, the last thing I want to talk to you about, because we're starting to run out of time, but
Right.
I did want to touch on it. You do one-on-one coaching sessions. And I know at some point when your stress is starting to affect your lives and the lives of your loved ones and your personality, everyone has a nature of how they're. Obviously, Jess is a lot bubblier than I am. But when your stress is starting to affect the way you act and things like that, you might want to sit down and speak to a stress coach like Jess. What should somebody expect if they want to sit down and they want to speak to you or another stress coach? What should they expect?
Yeah, of course. So the biggest thing is, like you were saying, I have a master's in public health. My undergrad is in therapy. But there is a difference between a therapist and a coach. So as much as I agree and I love therapy and I say go for it, it's so huge. A lot that where I try different, they are doing diagnosing, they're going through past trauma, they're like really bringing that out, they're talking about it, and they're that healing process, which is beautiful. And I love it. And I highly suggest it. For me as a coach, what we're focusing on is that next action step. So you kind of mentioned a couple of stressors, right? We talked about my one client, she's a new mom or becoming a new mom, first time mom, stressful. You talked about, maybe that anger with a significant other. It's a lot of the external factors that are really going on, right? So what can you do? And so that's really what we first do is when you call me and you're saying, hey, I want a stress management coach. My first question to you is, okay, what makes you feel like you want a stress management coach, right? And they're going to start to tell me those stressors that are in their life. And what I do is, so say they're saying, me and my husband, all we talk about is the kids and money. Other than that, we have lost our relationship. It's common, right? It's very common. Now, if we do talk, it's just anger. It's just frustration. It's yelling. How did we get here? Well, what can you do today? So we'll break that one goal down, and it's that bite-sized piece. So from this week, we meet every week. So from this week to next week, what is that one thing you can do? And so that's what we start to kind of talk about, right? And so what makes sense and where they kind of feel the most comfortable at, because my biggest thing, what works for me isn't going to work for you.
That's
right? So breaking that down to that one bite-sized piece, one goal, and then really building up to it. Because my biggest thing, we kind of talked about the habits, was for us to get over the big stressors or heal through the big stressors and work through the big stressors, you got to figure out those day-to-day stressors, right? So really learning how to create that healthy relationship through the smaller stressors.
That's awesome. It really is. I mean, there are times at which, I could sit down with a coach and say, the hell is going on? My wife and I have been married a long time. So basically, when something is really stressing me out, I just go, you do it. So, and she does the same, and it works fine, but not everybody can do that. Not everybody's married, and there are different things, but you're right. It's different for everyone. And that one-on-one coaching session is very personalized.
For sure.
And I think it would also be a big help if they came to you and said, hey, I took this assessment and look, so that would be great too. It gives you a place to start. Jessica, it's been just awesome talking to you. I mean, I'm so happy there were people like you out there, I've used this statistic before. I don't know if you know, but when I talk to neuroscience scientists and I talk to doctors, and they tell me that 75% of doctor visits can be directly related to stress. That's let's get over any stigma or any problem. Say, I'm so stressed out, I need help. It's time to reach out to people like you and say, hey, I need just some coaching. So just because I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
So let me say how much, on behalf of all the listeners, thank you for being there for people like me who are definitely need coaching time to time. So,
we all do. Yes.
Well, thanks again for joining us today. Hey, everybody, don't forget, go to Jessica's site. It's journeytoyourself.net, not .com. And you'll find out a lot more information, a lot more than we can cover in this one show. And there's a lot of stuff there that can help you. Of course, always go to stress.org and see all we have to offer as well. And this has been your host, Will Heckman. I want to thank everybody for joining us again today. Please don't forget to follow this podcast, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, be kind. I'm very sensitive. Remember that your support helps keep making these podcasts and all the other stuff we do at stress.org and the American Institute of Stress possible. I want to remind everyone that just as stress is different for each of us, there is no one stress reduction or management program or strategy that is right for everyone. So that means you need to join us next time because we're going to explore more stress management strategies and insights. And again, visit stress.org, gather some information, get some tools and techniques to live a healthier, happier, and hopefully a longer life. And I hope the information that you heard from Jessica and myself today will help you find contentment. Thank you all. Good day, everyone.